is the Athletic Football Show.
Welcome to the Athletic Football Show. I'm Robert Mays. Joining me tonight is the Athletic Zone, Mike Sando. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing better than Jets fans, even though it was a great way to end the game, a great win. They deserved it. I was kind of, just the human in you had to appreciate what that must have felt like at the end of the game for them to celebrate the win.
I'm sure they're feeling just fine right now. This is going to be one of those moments where you go a little too hard the night before and then you wake up and you think you had a good time and then you start paying for it. I think there will be a little bit of an emotional hangover when they have an evening to process everything that happened with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
We will get to that. We'll talk about the Rodgers injury, the outlook, maybe what comes next for the Jets here down the rest of the season. But let's start with what happened in this game. I expected this to be focused on the Rodgers news, have it be a somber night for the Jets. The Bills win an ugly kind of 13-3 type game. That is not what happened. A resilient Jets team says that's not how this is going to go. The defense is in it all night. They make just enough plays, and somehow they come away with the win in that game.
They really needed it because I was thinking the whole game, what if you were Robert Saleh? You have to be thinking of your messaging and your speech to the team after this
Absolutely.
game. On this
the look
moment.
on his face, when Rodgers came off. I mean, the man looked like he'd seen a ghost.
I know they were I thought, over the top during the Hard Knocks when, of course, they know they're being recorded and everything. But it was like every 5 seconds, it was like, thank you, Lord. We have Rodgers. Isn't he amazing? They looked at each other and you kind of got tired of it, but you appreciate it too from the position they've been in to suddenly have somebody who can almost coach himself, coach the offense and run your 2-minute drill, run your 4-minute drill, do all of that stuff. And to have that taken away without even getting hit. I mean, it wasn't like there was a huge crushing hit or something. This is just a play you've seen Aaron Rodgers do 100 times. It's just made no sense. So a ton to process. I think the messaging for him after the game becomes a lot easier off of a win. I do. I think they're sort of back to where they were last year, as a tough team on defense that needs to play smart on offense. And we'll see what options they have or, what the total severity is. But, they can still be a competitive team.
Saleh said after the game that he does fear that it's an Achilles. And even in the moment, it kind of reminded me of what happened with J.K. Dobbins yesterday, where in real time, it didn't look that bad. And then he's able to stand up afterward. And then Dobbins got helped off the sideline. Rodgers eventually sat down and got helped off. But it didn't look like some catastrophic injury. And then when you look at the replays and everything about it, I was talking to my buddies in our fantasy group chat. I said, I fear it's the same thing that happened with Dobbins. And it really does feel like we're headed down that path. And you mentioned the conversations and kind of the feeling and aura around Rodgers during Hard Knocks, where having him in the building changes everything. It changes the way that the guys feel about their chances, the way that the defense feels about the way they need to play, everything. And then to lose that and still play as hard as they did on that side of the ball and overall for the rest of the game, I feel like Robert Saleh, that staff, and the Jets themselves, every single one of those guys deserves a ton of credit for not folding up shop and just being completely deflated when you consider the context of what Rodgers meant to them over the course of the entire summer.
Well, the thing is, we didn't expect to have Zach Wilson playing for both teams, but that happened for some of the game too, with Josh Allen throwing interceptions and turnovers and really not taking care of the ball. All they had to do was just play a smart football game. So that helped, but I do give the Jets credit. I mean, the Garrett Wilson catch, come on. That's just an unbelievable play. It'll be one of the top 3 catches of the year. I don't care how long they make the season. It was really good. There were spirited plays. Them getting it on that 4th down, the 4th and 1, a little dicey there at the. I thought they were maybe going to try to dumb off. That was a huge play. I think they could rally around Breece Hall.
You got to go. You have to go for it there. I mean, you absolutely have to go for it. It was the right call.
It was, but I didn't know. I wasn't convinced that they were going to go for it. You never know what they're going to do. So. I thought that was good. Like I said, Breece Hall looked good. Defense looked good. I was late in the game. I was worried they were going to lose. I thought they were going to lose the game because they just kept singling Diggs. I mean, they're going to Diggs every single play. And didn't seem to be anything to mix it up. And then they even get an OPI and they still get down there and have a chance to make the field goal. So it was dicey, but I'm with you. I thought it was a really nice really nice win for the Jets that they needed badly to stave off what's going to be a terrible feeling.
We can talk about the Bills in a second and why this is just a horrendous loss for them. But I want to stay focused on the Jets for one more quick minute. This was a reminder to me of just how much underlying talent there is on that roster, independent of Aaron Rodgers. The moment that the Rodgers injury looked like it was going to be really bad, I tweeted out a joke that now the Jets should call Phillip Rivers just because I think it would be incredible and I would love to see that. But it was mostly a joke, and people were like, "Oh no, this is the tank for Caleb Williams moment." The Jets have way too many good players to win 5 games and intention to have the number 1 pick. And this was a stern reminder of that. The play that Garrett Wilson made, every time Breece Hall touched the ball, it seemed like it was an explosive play, even as they're working him back from injury. Quincy Williams, who is obviously a favorite of me and Nate on this show, anyone who's ever listened to the Athletic Football Show, to me, he's almost like the Jets defensive mascot. And I don't mean that in a pejorative way. He embodies like what that team is in the way that he plays. You saw every single bit of that tonight. Jordan Whitehead is a really good player at safety, and he's a forgotten man in that secondary because of how much talent they had. He comes up with 3 picks. The entire front is living in the backfield. Quentin Williams has a few different pressures. John Franklin Myers is causing chaos. Quentin Jefferson, again, is like the 4th or 5th defensive lineman or interior defensive player on this team. He had an impactful night. Just a consistent reminder across the board that even if Rodgers is out, they have so much talent on this team to at least be relevant, at least be competitive, no matter who ends up playing quarterback.
Oh, remember they were 7-4 last year, and they beat the Bills. By the way, they beat the Bills in November, 20-17, with a lesser version of the current team. Even without Rodgers, it's a lesser version. They're a better team than they were a year ago, even with Rodgers being gone, right? With some of the moves they've made and the growth of their roster. So yeah, they're not going for the top pick, and they can't. And by the way, the current regime can't. I don't care if Rodgers got hurt or not. I mean, this is an important year for everybody.
Exactly.
So this is not that team. This is not that team.
A really heartbreaking loss for the Bills. And I don't want to use too harsh of terms here in discussing the Josh Allen performance, but one of the first words that comes to mind is unacceptable. Playing that way in this game when you just didn't have to play a flawless game offensively, you didn't have to play a high-flying game offensively. All you needed to do if you were the Bills offense, when you looked at the state of the Jets offense with Zach Wilson, was not beat yourself and not hand them the ball over and over and over again. And that's what he did. And against this Jets team, they do a great job of speeding him up, making him uncomfortable, and just sending him directly into chaos mode. And tonight was kind of the worst manifestation of that. We saw the scariest version of Josh Allen in a bad way when he just kind of refuses to play within himself and within the offense. And even if there are some highlight moments that can come along with that over the course of a 17-game season, the lowlights like tonight are always going to be part of that equation. And for a team that I think really did its best to try to put pieces around him along the offensive line and in the receiving core to give him easy answers and maybe slow his heartbeat down a little bit this offseason, this is not a great note on which to start the season.
I feel like it's a choice by him right now. I think early in his career, it was who he was. And you wondered if he'd ever get out of the system. He just played recklessly. Of course, he has some of that swagger and running, but he's a mature guy making all the money now. And we've seen him play more disciplined balls. So, at best, you can chalk it up to, hey, tough division game against a team that beat him last year, that it's tough for them. It's a tough game, but some of those passes are just wing and a prayer plays. You don't have to do that. That's not just competitive. The competitor in you getting the most of you, right? That's not what those were. Those are choice throws, and you have to be accountable to your team. And I think that I still felt like he could. It's like I felt like this, like he knew he could move him down the field whenever he wanted. That's what it felt like to me. Hey, you know what? I'm going to take my shots. At least he's right. He was able to move him down in 2 minutes. He can still be a tier 1 quarterback when he needs to be, but that's borderline irresponsible if he's going to be doing that type of stuff. And they need him to stop, and they need some accountability. I think it's just an interesting season for the Bills. Not going to overreact on one game, but this is a trend of the turnovers, and they're going to need him to play better and smarter than that, or else he's not what he can be.
Yeah, I think the conversation needs to happen. And it was the sort of conversation that happened early in his career. And
Yeah.
that's why this is so disheartening, because I went there in 2019, the fall of 2019. And it was when you started to see some progress and there was indications that he was going to be taking a step forward, even if he didn't become kind of the fully formed star he was in 2020. I remember talking to Brandon Beane and to Josh just about the discussion that happened after his rookie year with him and McDermott and the offensive staff. And there was so much focus on, you don't have to get everything on every play. You just don't have to throw a touchdown on every play. Just understand it's worth living to play another down sometimes. And that's why some of these decisions were so frustrating. The first one, it's 3rd and 8. It's an arm punt. It's caught inside the 5, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, those are
Yeah.
not great, but you can live with them. The second
Certainly,
one
I thought
happens,
that too. They probably gained EPA on that one. I'm okay with
yeah,
that.
it's that you don't love it, but in that moment, in that down and distance situation, it's like, okay, that's fine. You live with that. The second one happens on 2nd and 13 when he has an underneath option on that play. That ball does not need to be thrown. The third one, it's 3rd and 2 from the Bills' 43-yard line. And he had, again, another underneath option on that play if he wanted to take it. And then the final one on that corner to Gabe Davis, that ball just doesn't need to be thrown in that situation. So outside of the first one, again, unacceptable, inexcusable, come to mind for the next 2 decisions. And then you have the fumble. So much of it just didn't need to happen based on the context and the situation at that point in the game. And that's what makes it maddening, is that they were avoidable, self-inflicted mistakes and self-inflicted wounds in pretty pivotal moments.
Yeah, it looks like here, I'm just looking at 21 turnovers in his last 13 starts. I think that's what it is. That's too many. He had a nice run before that. It's funny. I just downloaded his game logs, right, for his whole career, and then I just used like a conditional formatting to look at to look at where the heat is on these turnovers, and that's really what it is. About the last 13 games, it looks like for him have really been an uptick. So maybe it's a rut. I'm sure he can pull himself out of it, but this is where your head coach, your coordinator, your team needs to put some guardrails up or get through to him that ball doesn't just belong to him. It belongs to everybody.
I want to acknowledge that he is going to play against much worse defenses over the course of the season than this Jets team. But he's got 2 games against the Patriots this year. He's got 2 games against a Dolphins defense that I do think should be improved. I mean, the Chargers ran all over them, but I think over the course of the year, that Dolphins team still has a lot of talent on that side of the ball. So even if he's not going to play the Jets, who probably have an argument to be the best defense in the AFC, a pretty strong one, week in and week out, there's still plenty of good teams on the Bills' first place schedule that are going to be waiting around the corner. And that sort of play that we saw from him tonight just isn't good enough, period. When you have the aspirations and the goals that this Bills team has, and he is as central to those as he is, you just cannot play like that.
Yeah. So it's a long season. Maybe it's just one game, but that's a tough loss for them. Really a tough loss in a game they really should have won by just getting out of their own way.
All right, let's talk about the Rodgers situation and then potentially just what comes next here for this Jets team. It sounds like it's an Achilles. It sounds like he's probably done for the year. What do you think happens now for the Jets? Is this a moment where they have to kind of consider all of their options, taking into account what we just discussed about all of the talent on the roster and how crucial this season is? Or do you think that they can roll with Zach Wilson because he's the backup quarterback? That's what he's there for.
Well, I mean, Zach Wilson's going to play in the short term, but you have to have other options. I mean, Zach Wilson's bad luck or a bad decision away from leading the game too. There's no Mike White. Mike White was a pretty nice backup to have. I thought he was a great signing by Miami, but obviously was the odd man out the way the Jets did things. So I do think they have to consider all the options on the table. And, we're joking about Phillip Rivers, but, there are people, Matt Ryan's out there. I don't know that anybody wants to see Matt Ryan, but I think you have to consider everything for your team and just your locker room and see maybe Zach Wilson, is going to play better. But I think you definitely have to have other options. You need to look around and see who could possibly be available by trade. I'm just kind of scanning through, the backup quarterbacks in the league. There's not going to be a lot of people wanting to give up quarterbacks, and it's hard to train them up and get them into your system during the season.
Yeah, the short-term solutions none of them are good, and none of them are going to be good when you're put into this situation. Jameis Winston's name got mentioned a couple times online today as somebody who might be available. Maybe somebody like that is worth a call who's had starting experience. Zach Wilson, when starting and when playing, was arguably the worst starting quarterback in the league last year for long stretches of time. So
I was watching the Manning cast. They had Ryan Fitzpatrick on. I was like, I wonder if he's in shape.
well, the best part about that, I wasn't watching. I watched the regular broadcast on Mondays, but I heard some of the things that the Mannings were saying about Zach Wilson and the fact that I think Peyton said he should throw the ball 3 more times over the course of the entire game. And then Ryan Fitzpatrick was making some pretty critical comments about Zach Wilson's decision-making. When Ryan Fitzpatrick is being critical of some of your decision-making and the recklessness that you're playing with, you probably need to rein it in a little bit.
I think at a certain point, Ryan actually stood up for him finally in the end, a little bit, but yeah, it was tough. It's tough in the decision-making. Tough. I think Zach Wilson was in a tough spot today, though, too. I mean,
absolutely.
You talk about reps. I mean, he's been such an afterthought, right? I mean, he's not ready at all for this.
So let's talk about the reality here with the Jets after losing Aaron Rodgers. I think there are a couple different levels of this and layers of this to consider. One, even if tonight is exciting, even if I do think they're going to be a competitive team, the goal this year was to compete for and potentially win a Super Bowl. That's going to be really, really hard, if not impossible, with whoever they bring in to play quarterback. Even if your defense is going to be excellent, even if you have all of that young talent at some of your skill positions, I still think that's going to be an incredibly tough road in this AFC. And that fall back to reality that a lot of Jets fans are probably going to experience as the high of tonight wears off here over the next 48 to 72 hours, that's going to be a tough one because I do think it's a reality worth facing.
Oh, yeah, completely. Their best hopes, their best chance, their only chance. I was just thinking of if you were a fan, what if you just, ponied up and just bought the tickets or, you had to buy the licenses now, or there's people who bought suites. I mean, did you see the picture that was going around of the guy flipping off the camera? Did you see that? It's a great shot of
How does that guy feel right now, though? I'm sure that guy feels great.
Hey, he got the win, but I mean, I don't know if it was his son or the younger guy next to him just had this look like he was lost. I thought that's what sports can do to us. It's just really the highs and the absolute lows. And I was actually thinking early in the game, like, think of this: the Giants lost 40-0 at home, and they had the best weekend at the Met of any of the two teams, even though they lost. Fan,
I can't even comprehend how you're feeling right now. You have this entire offseason of hope. You have every reason to believe that you've kind of snapped out of this decades-long slumber at quarterback, where you finally have a guy that you can feel good about, confident about, that can raise the level of everyone else around him, the guy that gives you a chance every single week, no matter what else is going on. And I have a lot of sympathy for that and a lot of empathy for that because it is a life that I have lived for the 36 years that I've been on this planet.
Hey, Robert, what would you pay for 4 plays of Aaron Rodgers?
I can't even tell you. It's so tough to love a team and to grow up with a team and be invested in a team and never have that feeling, to go into every single week knowing that you're probably at best at a draw at the most important position in sports. And that's what Jets fans have been having to deal with. The Jets, the Browns, the Bears, I think are right in the same discussion, same kind of conversation in terms of quarterback quality over the last couple decades. And to think that you've escaped that, even if it's for a single season with the talent on this roster, had to be so intoxicating as a Jets fan this offseason. And then it's taken away from you 4 plays into the opener on national television. I just truly can't comprehend what that had to be like for some of those guys tonight.
No, I know. That's why, that's why for the Jets themselves, I give them credit for winning the game. I think it was a great win for them, but it is tough. I'm just scanning, Robert. I'm looking at like who's even third on depth charts on teams. It's like, seriously, it's like Case Keenum's and Mason Rudolph's.
I honestly think Andy Dalton would be worth a call. Honestly.
Yeah.
After the way he played last year and what he is for that Panthers team right now, he's a valuable backup and I'm sure a valuable voice for Bryce Young and what that season's going to look like for Bryce Young, but I'd at least pick up the phone if I were the Jets based on the way that he played last year. I think that he would give you a fighting chance based on how he played last season. But again, it's not
Frank Reich's not going to want to give up, the backup.
He's not
to this young guy,
He's not because that guy has a lot of value.
Yeah. These rosters, no one wants it. What are you going to give him? What are you going to give up for Andy Dalton, right? You're not going to give up a big pick.
The other side of this that I think is troubling for the Jets is that it wasn't just that Aaron Rodgers was their quarterback this season. Aaron Rodgers was the centerpiece of everything. Aaron Rodgers was the reason they brought in the offensive coordinator. They were talking in the pregame, Joe and Troy were, about how him being a coach and him being the one that's explaining the offense to all these young guys and him being the one that's dictating everything on that side of the ball. So now all of these other things that you've constructed around him to prop up this entire side of the ball, those start to fall away a little bit if Aaron Rodgers isn't your quarterback. So beyond the downgrading quarterback play that's inevitably coming, the influence and impact he had on the game plan, the way that the games would be called, every aspect of this, that starts to fall away, and that would worry me.
You know what? Who else I was thinking about? I know Nathaniel Hackett is making a lot of money off the Broncos still, so but it's not all about the money for these guys. They're competitors, and think of the ups and downs. Think what he's had. Hey, you're the head coach of the Broncos, and then it goes as bad as it could. The Russell Wilson thing goes off the rails. And then, hey, guess what? Me and Rodgers are reunited. This is unbelievable. And then now you're coaching without Aaron Rodgers. So yeah, it's all over the place for them. They were all in on him all the way. I think they were probably bound to be disappointed in the end anyway. This AFC is difficult.
Sure, but this is very kind of the worst possible timeline.
It absolutely is the worst possible. Yeah. No, this. Do you want to pull?
I guess he could have lasted one play,
or he could have, running out with the flag. He could have done it then. That would have been very Jets-like. But this is,
oh my God,
this is rough. This is just really rough, and I don't know what you do. There's no recovery. There's no recovery from having the guy who won 2 of the last 3 MVPs and you think is going to bounce back in a new setting and was excited, ready to go. There's no comeback from that. There's no approximation of that. You can't do it. You can't do anything other. We're talking about Andy Dalton's. That's what we're talking about.
Again, they deserve a lot of credit for the way they played tonight. I have to imagine that this will be a team that continues to play hard throughout the season. They're still so good on defense. They're going to be in these games. The team we saw tonight is likely the team we will see for the rest of the year with the Jets in some form, for good and for ill. And that is the reality that they're facing down without Aaron Rodgers. Tomorrow,
go ahead. I was just looking at their schedule of opposing quarterbacks. So the Jets have to play Mahomes still.
Yeah, they also play the Cowboys defense next week after the way that the Cowboys dismantled the Giants on Sunday.
They got another game with Josh Allen. They've got Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, Dak, Deshaun Watson, a couple games with the red hot Tua. Yeah. It's tough for them.
They play the Cowboys defense and then the Patriots defense over their next 2 games, no matter who's playing quarterback, that is not going to be fun.
Oh, man,
we will have more on all of this tomorrow. Diana Rossini is going to be joining us for the first episode of the show that her and I are doing on Tuesday. We're going to do it at 2 p.m. Eastern, the Rossini Report, every single Tuesday on our YouTube channel. We will talk a lot of Aaron Rodgers, all the updates, the thinking the Jets are going through right now, maybe some potential options for them. But for now, I think that that's really all there is to be said about, in some ways, a thrilling night at MetLife for Jets fans, and in many ways, a completely devastating one. And if you're a Jet fan, I think it could be no other way. Every single bit of thrill comes with some element of devastation, and tonight was no exception.
Nothing you can do.
Please come back tomorrow and check out our show with Diana. Highly encourage you guys to come listen to that. Very excited about it. You can hear Mike every Saturday now on the Football GM podcast with Randy Mueller on the Athletic Football Show feed. You're going to settle in with some pastries, some coffee on Saturday morning. You have the dulcet tones of Mike and Randy to accompany you with your morning coffee. So please check out those guys if you have not. We'll be back tomorrow with Diana and every single day during the week on the Athletic Football Show feed. Please come check us out. We'll talk to you guys soon.